Hello and welcome to Decoded by SUAD, a podcast series at Sorbonne University Abu Dhabi. I'm your host Shamma, and today's theme is AI, Government and People, Why Digital Literacy Matters More Than Ever. I'm joined by two colleagues, Professor Proscovia, Professor in Records Management and Archival Science, and Dr Forget, Assistant Professor in Records Management and Archival Science. Thank you both for being here today. So the first question I want to ask you, what does AI actually change in the everyday experience of government services?
Of course, AI has changed the delivery of government services. Traditionally, citizens used to visit institutions, for example. Now, in addition to the government having developed e-administration, we are seeing a lot of automated processes. So we no longer need to move even, so the government has facilitated a lot for the citizens to engage with these institutions, because you can go online and you can enjoy the services through the applications that the government is providing, and therefore there is little effort put in as far as mobility is concerned. And now I think the challenge is actually to be able to critically think around the services that are being provided. So the facilitation has been done by the government, but are the citizens all that literate to the extent the government is deploying AI applications?
What do you think about that, Doctor?
Allow me to clear my voice, because this is an interesting discussion, and I'm so grateful for my learned professor here who managed to set the scene, because indeed the services have been made convenient, comfortable for the citizens. But as information scientists, the reason why we are actually here is because we are concerned with the focus that governments have on the tools and not the people who are going to use those tools. Yes, we can now do everything from the comfort of our homes, and I can actually be a testimony to that, because I actually enjoyed the services myself. I processed my golden visa without having to visit any office, and within a week it was done. I also managed to even do my equivalence. So that's just a portion of how good AI is. But there's a darker side to it that we have to pay attention to. The people who are using the services, do they have the knowledge on how the systems actually work? When prompts are given to us by AIs, do we know how the machine arrived at that decision? And many times people actually assume that the decision that you are given by a platform which is AI enabled is final, and they are not able to challenge that. So there has to be education given to the citizens, and not just the students we teach here, but across the society, because these AI-enabled government services are cutting across everyone. So I am looking forward to this conversation we've just started to appreciate how that can be achieved.
And may I just add just one point? Because as information scientists, we are very much interested in the information that is generated around processes. And usually when innovators are doing their thing, implementing all these very sophisticated technologies to deliver effective service to the citizens, they never think about the issue of information. So information is so critical to all these services, because in case of any wrong automated decision making, how do we sort of track the entire process? How is it captured? Traditionally, transparency and accountability was promoted through access to records or information behind the decisions that have been made. And now we are having to deal with codes of these applications, or the applications itself. And with my colleague here, Dr. Forget, has just mentioned the levels of literacy in all aspects of service delivery. So we are trying to problematize the fact that, yes, innovation is good. Of course, all of us as citizens, we want effective service delivery. But it shouldn't come at the expense of violating our rights. We need to be able to access the background information behind the decisions that have been made. It goes well if it's a right decision that you receive as a citizen, but if you feel you've been unfairly judged, then you need to be able to understand how to go about in order to get redress.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned that the population or as users, there is a lack of literacy in the usage of these tools. So why would one argue that digital literacy is a civic issue?
Exactly. You've really joined the conversation very well. Because look, there is so much attention, like I said, on developing the technology. But there's clearly a gap between the speed at which technology is being deployed and literacy development. Because the people are lagging. They think that whatever information they get from an AI-generated output is accurate. They are not able to question it. They are not even able to appreciate how that decision has been arrived at. And all this is because I think there's a lack of knowledge on the existence of our profession and what it can bring to this discourse and developments that are taking place. I can give you a practical example of what I actually experienced yesterday as I chose to attend briefly one of the sessions on yesterday's seminar. It was on
conference.
Yes, that one. It was on environmental laws and policies. A very good conference it was. So I raised up my question and asked the panelists that where are the information scientists in this discourse? Because they kept on lamenting that the data centers are consuming so much energy. And I told them it's because information scientists are normally put at the periphery of these developments, and they are not considered as players. And to my anticipation, when the person responded to me, they said, guilty as charged. We will make sure that next time we have a similar conference, computer scientists are amongst us. So it got even worse.
I know.
Yeah.
So what can I add to that?
Such is the confusion, you see.
Indeed. You know, the thing is, within government development, or if the government is supposed to create more efficient services, there is still, governments are not private companies. Governments have citizens to take care of. So in as much as we need advancements, governments need to use technology in order to deliver good services, quality services effectively. They still need to put the citizen at the center of all these developments. And when it comes to all democratic societies, information is quite key in, because it's information that holds everything together. So the technologies are there, but the fuel that drives all these processes is the information. But in this development, we are seeing that a lot of attention is paid to the technologies, but very little is paid on how effectively the information that is generated in these processes is captured. And not only that, traditionally people have been used to going to seek information from governments, and this information has changed. It's more complicated. As scientists in our discipline of information science, we put a lot of emphasis on issues of provenance, authenticity of the information, its reliability, and we need to see these things at the core of all these developments. But they never receive sufficient attention, unfortunately. No citizen would like to access false information. Now, that responsibility is being put on us as citizens to engage in our critical thinking in order to judge, is this information authentic or not? But we are seeing a lot of deep fakes. We are seeing a lot of developments that are fake, that have impacted the facts infrastructure. And that is why we are putting a lot of emphasis as to why information literacy is key, in addition, of course, to other skills like digital literacy and all that. We need the governments need to invest more in educating the citizens. And it shouldn't only just be a clique of technically savvy people that should be now, leading the race. But we all need to be educated as citizens.
That's interesting.
Before you come in with your other question, I think I need to reiterate on the literacies that she touched on. Because what's key to actually focus on and what we wish to see happening is the impartation of digital literacy, like she said, AI literacy, and information literacy. These three literacies are key to making sure that the intended goals of AI-enabled services are fully achieved. So AI literacy speaks to the ability by people to actually navigate these complex systems. And then digital literacy and information literacy then speaks to, the ability by people to make sense of the information they get from the system and not just accept it because it's coming from a system. So I thought I should
Absolutely.
reiterate
Thank you
on that
so
point.
much for doing that.
Do you think the teaching that you are advocating for about these systems, do you think it should be focused more on the technicality of using these AI systems or more on the, for example, sort of awareness of what the output might be from these AI systems if it's, not completely accurate all the time? Because I would consider myself as a tech-savvy person, but when using these tools, I was not aware how faulty they can be, how much false information or like wrong sources they would cite. So what do you think is the first step or the right step in creating like a program of awareness or learning for the population?
So you see, in most societies, citizens interact mostly with municipalities, and if countries have that kind of administration, local administrations, I think that governments, in order to promote all these different types of literacies, they need to work hand in hand with the municipalities to create platforms where citizens can be educated, to create awareness. Not so long ago, a lot of buzz has been around open data. The governments are providing citizens with open data. We all now have a lot of information which we can exploit in order to make money out of it, because information is money. But that's not true, because exactly what she's been arguing is the fact that most of us are not even aware of what is happening. Many people have been left out, even despite the fact that the governments are publishing a lot of free information that we can exploit as citizens and create new services. We don't have the information skills to exploit this information. There are no IT platforms upon which ordinary citizens can practice. So I sort of imagined that if the government authorities collaborate with the municipalities, because of course citizens have more interactions with municipalities, and then you can create projects, you can create platforms, you can create awareness. So it can be done in the same way. AI is being implemented in the government services.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think there has to be a balance. We do appreciate that we are living in the digital era where technology is moving really fast at a lightning speed. So there has to be a balance. And from my observations, as a researcher and as a teacher in an institution of higher learning, I think at this level there is a bias on the technical side of technology. You yourself told us you are tech savvy, which is a good thing. But the problem is that if these technological skills are not balanced with the human skills, it creates dangerous gaps, because then people are not able to question, like I said, the outputs that come out. It reminds me of a very short episode I had with one of my students who had consulted an AI generative tool to respond to a question I had given them. So to their mind, because they used an AI, this was the most perfect answer, but then their grade happened to be very low. So they came to me for an answer and said, "But Professor, I used AI. How come my grade is this low?" I was happy because they were very frank and told me that they used AI. So I had a starting point in educating them on how AI is not a reliable tool. Yes, we are enjoying it, but we have to use it carefully and critically. So our teaching has to be more focused on responsible use of AI. I got so excited this morning when I woke up and had a look at the application which was introduced to us by the Human Resources sometime last year around November, December. It's called Tomo. You know about it?
No, not aware.
Yeah, you need to have it. The HR were here in the atrium for about 2 days, and they were teaching us about how to use the application. It's basically a government platform that's meant to enhance talent development. So they offer a lot of training programs. And on today's program, I spotted training on AI as a journey. But then when I read the description of that training, I also noticed it focused on the technical aspects of AI, coding, programming, and rarely do you see people talking about these literacies, the soft issues. Yes. So it can be frustrating how these systems become rigid because the attention is on improving the technology, making sure we have AI smarter systems. How about the human beings? They are being left out.
Exactly. And I'll just add to the fact that even though these applications, we seem to imagine globally that they are everywhere, but there are so many issues that are not being addressed, like issues of digital divides, data divides, issues of exclusion.
Yeah.
So in as much as certain parts of the world are enjoying these technologies, we also need to educate students to understand that this doesn't apply in each and every context. So issues of exclusion are quite critical.
Yeah, and biases too, Proscovia, because you mentioned exclusion. AI are models that are trained by human beings like us. So how they respond to you and give you a solution depends on how they were trained. So you see that even biases and errors are promoted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people need to be aware of that.
Yeah. I want to ask you, so what do you think with all these issues raised, what do you think the role of universities should be beyond regarding teaching technical AI skills?
I think that universities, of course, must embrace AI usage within the curriculum, but that doesn't mean that we should sort of surrender as teachers, because now we have these applications. And it's so easy to create this feel-good feeling as far as students are concerned, because then they will consult the chat GPT and they will get the right answers, and then they assume they are educated. But in the actual fact, my practical experience that I had last week, students were given an assignment to write between 1 to 2 pages, consult literature. Literally, they had to look for literature in a library catalog, and then use that to respond to the questions that were being asked. And it was actually AI and the mindset of records managers, I think, how it should be implemented and how it should be changed. Now, this was an assignment program to take place between 1 hour and 1.5 hours. After 20 minutes, they told me they were done. So in as much as, of course, what was required was that they were supposed to capture their prompts and, produce the reports, but capture the prompts. After that exercise, I asked, so do you feel good about that exercise that you already done? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, if we take away the AI tool, have you engaged with the article? Can you read? Have you benefited anything from the assigned readings? And can you write the language, the level of English that the AI has provided you with without it? So what you are missing out is the actual training. So we are not against AI. Of course, we have to embrace AI. I use AI as a researcher. But what are we doing as educators to enhance the grounding skills? For not so long ago, primary schools, we are complaining about how students can't write anymore, how they can't read, and all that. So what is this going to do to the current generation? The digital natives. But now AI is even exacerbating the situation, because with their surrendering, can we surrender? As a researcher, I refuse. I use AI as a research tool, but I do the thinking for myself, and I write, and I can use it to improve my language. But it's quite critical that students get the skills required to ground them as educated human beings. And this, we have to be very careful. Because it will require individual responsibility of the professors.
Yeah. She's really said it well. Maybe I can add on to that by saying, as we are having this conversation, it's only not to represent the students who are enrolled in our discipline, because now there's a danger of leaving out, students in other disciplines. And for that, I think when it comes to teaching subjects like information literacy, digital literacy, I understand that every professor is an expert in their own right, but I feel that universities, SUAD included, must offer a course like information literacy as a university-wide module to ensure that every student who graduates from this institution, regardless of the discipline they are enrolled into, they have those critical skills. Absolutely. Because this skill is not only applicable to those who are doing a major in information science, it applies to students in mathematics and physics, in engineering, for as long as you are a human being.
Every field.
Yes, actually it goes beyond students, because we also we have a responsibility to take care of the community and the society at large. And as researchers and professors, I think we can play a role in that by collaborating with different entities and arms of the government to maybe come up with modules that can be publicly made available to members of the public in very simple language that will make the people understand what they're dealing with when they make use of these platforms.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing that the both of you are, taking any chance you can to educate your students on the usage of AI and how they are, they are responsibly using it or not. I think that's a great step when it comes from the part of professors. So my last question for you is, what do you think the most significant change is going to be brought around by AI in 2026? And what do you hope to see as well?
Well, I like the second phrasing of your question, what I hope to see. Because the first one that says, what's going to be the significant change? The changes are almost like on a daily basis, and we all agree that the speed at which AI and technology in general is moving is the speed of lightning. We cannot cope as human beings. But what I would like to see is actually not only smarter AI systems, but also human beings, people in society who are AI aware, so that they don't blindly interact with these services. They have to know what really goes into these systems, so that when they interact with the systems and the services and they get responses, they're able to challenge the results. They are able to appreciate that there can be errors and biases. AI is not the start and the end. That's what I really wish for people to gain that knowledge.
So, as far as I'm concerned, I think that, I tend to think in global terms. I don't know whether it's because I come from a continent of disadvantaged people, but I live in Sweden, of course, and I see the developments that are being enjoyed by those countries that have access to technology and they can develop their services. So I would like to see more a development that sort of thinks about inclusivity, how this wonderful technology can improve the livelihoods of so many people beyond the haves to go to the have-nots, right? But I also would like to see more sustainability in it, because, these technologies, we know that they use a lot of information to begin with. We have data centers that require a lot of water sources and so on. So the issue of sustainability should be at the center of these developments. Sustainability when it comes to the environment, but also the sustainability of us as human beings in this. Because you can imagine, as lecturers, as professors here, I think we've been walked through a number of applications that we are supposed to know and apply to our teaching. Where is the time when things are changing all the time and we are getting new applications? Of course, the developments are wonderful, but are we developing sustainable societies? How do we feel as human beings? When we have 10 applications that we're supposed to use, of course, we have a variety. I'm not against the varieties. But what is the sustainability of all this? Since, there is a drive, these developments are market-driven, right? So there you go. So I would like to see a more sustainable development that sustains societies addresses issues, and the environment and addresses issues of inclusivity and all the different divides.
Let's hope so. Thank you so much for the both of you for joining us today for this conversation.
Thank you so much for bringing us here.
Yes,
and for your engagement.
it was really a great opportunity. I really like it when we are given the platforms as information scientists because, as you know, SUAD is the only institution offering this discipline, and this is a chance to send out a message to the world and to the UAE.
And to let them know that we do not only manage information, but
Yeah.
we can have more intelligent things to say about.
Yes.
Well, let's
current
hope the message was sent. Thank you so much, everyone. This was Decoded by SUAD. Thank you for tuning in and see you next time.